All right, welcome everyone. Let's go ahead and get started. I want to take a moment to just get comfortable. It's really nice to get into a stable, comfortable posture when you start the meditation. It can prevent a lot of movement and irritation and agitation later on. It's good to just kind of wiggle around a little bit and settle into what feels comfortable to you. And while we're settling into the body, you can also settle into the be a helpful attitude to have for meditation. We spend so much of our life in a goal-directed mindset. We often bring that to meditation. We often bring in the idea that the mind should be a certain way. It should calm down, quiet down, or not think. There should be some pleasantness or maybe even some helpful insight that should come. And it's very nice when those things happen, but you don't get to choose. So maybe see if you can just let that go and let this next half hour be just a gift of time without anything you need to accomplish. You can just be. You've already succeeded. Congratulations. You might notice that even just being without doing, stuff still arises. There's still sound and feeling and thought, small movements of the body. The mind is doing whatever it's doing. It still happens, all without what feels like your input. It's okay to just be with whatever arises. Just letting things come and go, letting things flow past. And as we sit here with no real intention, just kind of letting things be, letting phenomena arise, and then inevitably passing away, I'm quite sure we've all noticed something. Even in the midst of just letting things be, the mind wants to do stuff. It has thoughts it wants to think, plans it wants to make, worries it wants to worry. You can just let these come and go as well. And when you realize you've been caught up in one of these things, just simply let it go. Experience is a flow of sound, sight, feeling, thought, arising and passing away, all on their own. These phenomena are none of your doing. This might be easy to see with some phenomena like sound or sight, but it's true of everything. Where did that thought come from? Where did that emotion come from? When you wake up from being lost in thought, letting go of whatever you were lost in, and returning to the present moment with ease and kindness. One thing you might notice is that all of these sensations that are flowing past, they're all conditioned, meaning they were all caused by something else in the past. The sound of the bird was conditioned on the bird seeing a friend nearby. And that friend flew nearby because it was hungry and it was looking for food. It was hungry because it hadn't eaten for some time, and so on and so forth. That worry in the mind is conditioned on something your boss said earlier in the day. And your boss said those words because he was upset about something that happened at home in the morning. And the thing at home happened for some other reason, and so on and so forth. Everything that arises and passes away is subject to causes and conditions. This is true of even things that feel like us, thoughts or emotions or our body. Nothing in experience is outside of that. Just resting in this flow of conditioned phenomena arising and passing away. Nothing needs to be done. Nothing whatsoever. Simply exist. There's nothing you need to do that. And letting go in this way can be quite relaxing. We spend so much of our lives holding on to how we feel like we should be or how we should be showing up in the world. When you let go, it's very much a weight lifted off your shoulders. Huh. You can just be. You might see if there's any sense of that. And if there is, you might let go more fully into that. There's perhaps one more thing we can see. There's a feeling or a group of feelings that are very subtle, very shy, are often hard to get a look at. It's the feeling of I am. This feeling is almost always present in experience. There are gradations, it can be stronger or softer. And perhaps that feeling is softer now at the end of the meditation, after we've let go of much of this doing. But you might take a look and see if it's there. See if you can locate some felt sense of I am or I am meditating. It's okay if you can't. But if you can find that, you might note that it's different than the feeling when you're out and about living life. So this feeling changes. It's not always the same. This feeling of I am can take different forms and be louder or softer. It may be that you may be able to see that, have some inkling of this. There's not anything to do about it. It's just something to notice. And as this meditation draws to a close, I might take a moment to appreciate that just as the phenomena we experience were caused by other phenomena in the past, so too do the actions of this body and this mind in the present moment condition the future. And so the mind states that we cultivate in meditation, when we move towards more equanimity, more kindness, more love, spreads forth from this moment into the future. It changes our future experience of the world. It changes the experience of those around us. Perhaps not so greatly from this one meditation, but it does make a difference in an aggregate over a long period of practice. It can do a great deal of good in the world. Perhaps take a moment to appreciate that truth. Istig, Johan.
Hi.
One quick announcement before we start. For those of you guys who listen to Dhamma on the weekends, she's in China at the moment, and I think the internet connectivity there is not. I think there's like an issue with bypassing the Great Firewall. So she's not teaching class the next couple of weeks. So there will be substitutes. So some parts of the Dhamma seem to be pretty easy to understand. Maybe not so easy to kind of integrate into your life, but some of them are easier to understand than others. Maybe this is different for different people, but for me, impermanence was always pretty easy to grasp. Like once I was told that what arises will eventually pass away, that was really easy to see. Like, you just look at a thought or look at this body or some physical object and see that that's true. Some other parts of the Dhamma are not that easy. In anatta, the idea of no kind of permanent, stable self, I think is like a difficult one for everyone. And it's difficult because it seems to contradict our lived experience. We have this very kind of like strong feeling that we have agency or will or intention. There's this feeling that kind of at the core of it, there's something in me that could choose otherwise, like other than whatever I'm doing right now. It's the feeling that is like kind of somehow outside of this web of causes and conditions is very strong. So what I want to talk about tonight is that discrepancy between what the Dhamma tells us about anatta, the idea that this universe is kind of mechanistic and it's just subject to causes and conditions, in our lived experience that we have we have intention or free will, or we can choose things, or however you want to phrase that. And I'm going to try out a metaphor. We'll see how it goes. It's a little extensive. I will offer it to you, and we'll see how it goes. So you may want to close your eyes for this first part at least, and see if you can kind of bring this to life. And so I'll start us off with three pieces to this metaphor. The first piece is that you might imagine that you're standing on the bank of this river. And this river is a great, great river. It's the other shore is kind of lost in the distance. You can't even see it. You can't see the source or the mouth of the river. It's just this great expanse of water flowing past. And this is analogous to the great web of cause and effect that is our experience, that spans throughout the whole universe from the beginning of time to the end of time. And this river is not uniform. There are little currents in it, many of these little currents, these little kind of bundles of water that they're not solid and they don't exactly cohere together, but there's some sense that one current is a bit separate from other currents. And these are analogous to the streams of karma that kind of move our world and define our experience. And for the third piece, I'll bring in a little true story. In 1992, there was a container ship that was crossing the Pacific Ocean, and it dropped a container off, and the container fell into the ocean, opened, and that container was full of rubber duckies. This is a true story. These rubber duckies, some months later, washed up on this beach in Alaska, and it was just covered with rubber duckies. So we're going to add some rubber duckies into this metaphor. We're going to add 8 billion rubber duckies into this great river. And these rubber duckies represent these body minds that we have. So this is where we're going to start. So you might imagine, you might take on the lived experience of one of these rubber duckies that gets kind of thrown into the river, and it finds its way into one of these currents, one of these streams of karma. You might imagine that as this little rubber ducky opens its eyes, its first experience of the world is this kind of view that's kind of bobbing back and forth. And one of the first things it might notice is that the movement of the view coincides with the movements of the body. And this is what happens to these body minds when we are born. When consciousness kind of turns on in the womb, or maybe we don't start to notice this until after we're born, but when we're very young, we start to notice that because our experience is mediated by this body, our experiences changes. So as we move, our vision moves. As we flail our arms around, we see certain things happen in the visual field, and we feel certain things happen in our arms in particular ways. And because of this, because our experience is mediated by the body, we very, very naturally identify with the body. The mind is a thing that kind of sees patterns in the world, and it sees the pattern that those two things are linked. And it says, oh, I'm going to call this me. This body is me. And as we start to explore, as we start to move our bodies and make sounds and do those things, we appropriate those movements too. It becomes my body. I am moving my body in this way. So we appropriate the body and we appropriate the movements. And if we come back to the river, you might notice that in this river, there are some rocks, some obstacles in life. And just as, and there's also, like water naturally flows around rocks. So there's this rock, this obstacle, and there's this kind of clearer path of water off to the side. So this is an unpleasant experience, like hitting the obstacle, and the pleasant experience, this kind of nice, clear expanse of water. So just as this duck that's caught in the current will kind of naturally follow the flow of water around the rock, away from the unpleasant and towards the pleasant, it might not always be perfect, but that's the kind of, there's a kind of general tendency. So too do these body minds have the tendency to approach what is pleasant and to run away from what is unpleasant. And so we appropriate that movement too. It becomes, I ate the ice cream, I got the ice cream and I ate it. I spit the broccoli out of my mouth. We appropriate those things too. And so as we go on through the world, we are able to make kind of bigger and bigger structures with our mind. And we're able to plan further and further ahead. And it becomes something more than just the simple moving towards pleasant and moving away from unpleasant. And we make these grand structures. We decide we're going to go to college and we're going to pursue this career and we're going to try and date this person and all these things too. We appropriate those as well. And so this is where the mirage of identity comes from. It's that it starts from that like very natural appropriation when we're very, very young. It's our learned it's our pattern matching learning the world, and it learns it incorrectly. And so you can imagine this rubber ducky who's like an older person now. It's not a child, and it's trying to chart its course around. It feels like it's trying to chart its course around rocks, and it's trying to do so like several obstacles ahead. But it's doing this all while all of the movements of the rubber ducky are just governed simply by the current, by the karma around it in the river at large. And this is an excellent metaphor for what we're doing in our life. Another way I've heard it phrased is there's an amusement park ride at Disney World for little kids, not a big scary one. And what it is, it's basically like a set of tracks, and these they look like cars, or like kind of driving cars, are on the tracks. And there's these little steering wheels for the little kids to play with. And this is for like 2 or 3 year olds or whatever. And they go around the track in whatever prescribed prescribed track there is, but the little kids get to play with the steering wheel and feel like they're steering. This is what we're doing. This is what we're doing. But of course the felt reality is a little different than that. You might imagine this rubber ducky who is going down the river and goes into a difficult place, perhaps some rapids where it's kind of tossed about this way and that and slammed into the rocks and kind of pushed under the water, and it can't get up and it can't see the way out. And, you can imagine how that would be very hard if you're living from the point of view of the rubber ducky. But if you can see the world from the way I've been describing this metaphor, from kind of the viewpoint on the bank, your experience of reality becomes very different. The person on the bank is just kind of sitting and watching all this happening. It's not happening to them in the same way it is when you're living from that viewpoint. And the way we kind of come to that viewpoint is practice. What happens when we come to practice first is that we're just seeing from the point of view of the rubber ducky. We're just seeing our life from the kind of self-oriented view, the idea that we are these separate beings, and from identification with the body. But as we practice, our viewpoint starts to widen a bit. And we start to see this current of karma around us. And we start to see that we're being moved around by karma. Like, this is the reason we do certain things is because of our karma. It's because of like, it's not because of any choice we make. And the more of that we see, the less that viewpoint of the self kind of directs our path, or kind of permeates our experience. And one of the last things to go is that feeling of intention or feeling of being able to choose. I think I like called it a mirage earlier. That's a good analogy. Um, I grew up in Texas, and Texas is very hot, and the part of Texas I was in was very flat. And so, driving on the highway in the summer, when the conditions are right, I would often see a mirage. And perhaps the first time I saw that, I might have been confused. I might have thought it was actually a puddle of water. But um, um, after you see it a few times and you see it clearly, you know that it's just a mirage. And this is a really good way to understand this feeling of intention. It's not that that feeling is not there. There's something there, just in the same way that there's something there, with the mirage. There's some effect of the atmosphere that I don't know the physical mechanism, but it does whatever it does to the photons, and the photons appear in the way they do. But it's not what you think it is. And intention is not what you think it is either. Like we think of it as some property of ourselves, something outside of causation that could do otherwise, but it's not. It's just a feeling. It's just a feeling. It's just a feeling that we appropriate. And so we practice, and we start to be able to we start to like first catch like little we don't catch clear glimpses at first. This is like it's pretty difficult to see that. Not difficult, but it's pretty it doesn't happen at the beginning of practice usually to see that clearly. It takes some time often, but we can get glimpses from kind of even the beginning of practice. We can get a kind of inkling that this is true. We can see some of our behavior being caused by karma, and we can kind of understand. We can take that to the furthest extent and understand that all of our behavior is a facet of karma. And so I think the natural question is when this understanding is presented is like, what do you do with this information? How do you use it to live your life? And I guess what I have to say to that is that you are where you are in this moment. Your practice is where your practice is, and your model of the world is whatever your model of the world is. So if there's a feeling of intention or the ability to choose, that's what's there. And that feeling is there almost all the time for almost all of us, almost all the time. There is a spectrum for how strongly that feeling is felt, but almost all of us, almost all the time, have some feeling of that. So if it's there, it's there. Don't throw it out. I think even the Buddha, not being him, I don't know for sure, but I think even the Buddha would have had the lived experience of this at some times, just because our experience is mediated by the body. It's like I'm not seeing the sight that comes through your eyes. I'm not hearing the sound that comes through your ears. I'm hearing the stuff that comes through this body. So we need both of those to move around in the world, both of those viewpoints. And it's a little unfortunate. So those two viewpoints are, this is a kind of big concept in Buddhism, and it's really unfortunate how they're named, I think. The viewpoint from the rubber ducky is called the relative viewpoint, or the relative perspective. And the viewpoint from the riverbank is called the ultimate perspective. And it's really unfortunate that they're named that way, because when you hear ultimate, I want to do the ultimate thing. That sounds like the best. But it's not. You need both. You can't function in the world in a helpful way without the relative perspective. So when you're in the place where you feel like you have a choice, use that, and use that skillfully. Make a skillful choice. make your life better and make the life of those around you better. Do that. That's helpful and good. But also, second to that, use this knowledge that you have, whatever access you have to this viewpoint, even if it's just kind of hearing my words, use this, lean into it. Rather than, I'll say this knowledge of the ultimate viewpoint is power. It is the key that unlocks the chains of your suffering. The stepping back from the viewpoint of the rubber ducky to the viewpoint on the bank, this smooths your passage through life. I'll make one more modification to this metaphor. If you look out at the river, there's all these like rocks and branches, but they're really prevalent close to the shore. And as you get further out into the middle of the river, they thin out, and in the middle of the river, there's a channel with no obstructions. And this is the Dhamma. The Dhamma has different meanings, but in this context, the Dhamma is living your life in a harmonious way that doesn't lead to suffering. We still have physical pain and sometimes even emotional pain because we're tied to these bodies, but we don't have to have psychological suffering. And psychological suffering is 99% of our discomfort. So there's this clear path in the middle of the river. And the thing to understand about this path is that it has a kind of gravity to it, or it's, I would say magnetic, but that doesn't fit the metaphor. It pulls you in. The way this works is that when you're exposed to the Dhamma, whether through somebody speaking it to you directly or reading a book or you seeing the truth of reality in your own practice, when you're exposed to this, you naturally will apply that knowledge to the world. You'll see, you'll hear a statement about the Dhamma, and you'll eventually see the truth of it somewhere in the world. And when you see the truth of it in the world, you can orient yourself with respect to that truth. So you can act based on that truth in a way that lessens your suffering in some way. And when you act in a way that lessens your suffering, you're incentivized to do the thing that lessens your suffering, which is follow the Dhamma. So there's this kind of pull to this current in the middle. Once you've touched the edge of the current, which all of you have been exposed to the Dhamma, there's this tendency to pull you further and further in. It's a feedback loop. And so this is how this works in our lives that are just kind of us being born down the river on this current. Exposure to the Dhamma is something that that just kind of by that exposure moves your life onto a life with less suffering, just by that exposure to the Dhamma. So going back to the question about what to do with this knowledge, you are where you are and act skillfully, kind of based on however you're modeling the world at this moment. But you have this knowledge. Let that knowledge crack open this relative worldview. Let the perspective from the bank kind of creep into the way you live your life. I think you'll find that when it does, like not only does your life get better and smoother, what you'll find is this stuff starts creeping in. These resultants from this viewpoint. You'll find equanimity coming into your life. You can imagine kind of flowing down the river as this rubber ducky, just kind of locked in that worldview, and your life consists of, congratulating yourself for dodging all these rocks and beating yourself up from like when you fail and patting yourself on the back because you move close to this other rubber ducky that you really like, and your life without this other view, that's what your life is going to be, that this constant kind of like push and pull and being upset at yourself when you miss your goals, and just all this stress and the suffering. But when you can see from the point of view of being on the side of the river, it just flows past, and there's equanimity regardless of what happens. You find happiness too. Like we tend to think of happiness as something that we have to go out and get. We only get happiness when the circumstances are right, but it's not the case at all. Happiness is something that's intrinsic to experience. It's happiness is something that's present, that's always present when there's no kind of grasping involved. So when we are able to kind of step outside that, happiness just naturally blossoms. And there's also gratitude too. That moment of touching the Dhamma that I spoke about, that kind of initial moment of just whatever your first exposure of that was. It's just a gift. You just happen to be floating in the right place. You just got lucky. We all just got lucky. There's a great deal of gratitude for that when your worldview opens up. And there's gratitude for all the little things in life too. It's just gratitude for being alive, because it could very easily be otherwise. We have this fantasy that we whatever we have in our life is due to our own doing. It's not. It's just we happen to be in whatever place we happen to be. The current happened to be whatever it was. The only real response to that is gratitude. I think that's all I have to offer tonight. Thank you all for being here. I appreciated that. Yeah, I always enjoy like sitting with you, and I always enjoy like your company and talking with you. So I'll open the floor to anything that arose during the sit, or any questions about the talk, or any questions about practice in general. And I would also, I have a question as well. There were several things I thought about talking about in addition to what I did, but it was already a bunch for one talk, and that felt like enough. But one thing that is always interesting to me is that when people come to this viewpoint from the side of the bank of the river, it seems to be taken either one of two ways. It can be completely freeing, just the idea that we're these little rubber duckies floating along. I don't have to do anything. I'm just experience whatever comes. Or it can be like very, 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 very fearful to the idea that I can't control if I'm gonna like smash into this rock or not. I'd just be interested if anybody wants to share how they have felt about that, or yeah, I would be interested to hear that, but no pressure. And questions are welcome too.